Confessions of a YouTuber, well, an allotment YouTuber. Sometimes I wonder what the hell I'm going to show you. I sort of just come over the plot and make a bit of a plan. Things just occur to me, and well, I just bring you along and we watch what I'm doing. But today I'm struggling a bit, so I came over and had a look round, and I think what I'm going to do is just do the things that need to be done, and I'll show you as I go along, as usual. So I'm going to start just here because, well, I've neglected the fruit garden really. I got all that came down off of these gooseberries, and really it's detritus from those sawflies, so I need to scoop all that up. I had a bit of a strip down of rhubarb at some time and clearly just chucked it on the floor, so that wasn't very special. Got a bit of weeding to do in that hole where I killed a rhubarb, and there's quite a lot of mess underneath those rhubarb. I should be picking these gooseberries, but I've got other things to do really. I'd like to mow the lawn, but my strimmer's broken. You know, that end bit with the coil in, with the twine in that goes round and round, that's been going round and round on the ground for so long that it's actually worn away. And my strimmer's made by steel, and still don't have any replacement parts for that for a month. So that's a bit of a pain. So even when I get to getting the lawnmower out, it's only going to be the middles, not the edges. So I haven't really got the motivation to do that right now. I stripped out some of these beds, as you saw in my last video, and just left everything on the floor. And I've still got some grass clippings from when I last mowed the grass. So I really have been neglecting this area, and I got a barrow full of fairly dried rhubarb leaves. So I think first order of the day is just to get this, well, speedily cleaned up, and I'll do that very quickly and you can see it on time lapse. I did want to show you the raspberries because I was very anxious that these raspberries weren't going to come to anything, but I'm very pleasantly surprised at the amount of fruit on the tops of these, almost all of them, and some even fruiting. And I'm going to taste that one. Flipping gorgeous. And my path, I've been neglecting that as well. Haven't even pinned down the membrane, which is one of the things I plan to do. So there's still stuff to do here. Let's have a look at these poppies. They are amazing. And I was so surprised to find these beautiful pink ones. Absolutely incredible. And you can see these paler red ones, but there's a real deep red one there as well. Just gorgeous. So glad we put those in there, although they have encroached on the path. No problem. I know you'll all relate to this. When you get an allotment, or you watch it on YouTube or the gardening programs on television, it always looks, well, fairly idyllic, but there's a reality to running an allotment, especially one this size, and that is that it's hard work, and there's a lot that's not glamorous, just like that. That wasn't glamorous, but needed to be done, and it's that ongoing maintenance that, well, it's just effort, and it requires quite a lot of dedication. So all you allotmenteers and gardeners, you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, well, got a little bit more to do on here. Somebody asked me in the comments last week, did I need all this plastic to grow things? And well, the answer to that, of course, is no. You don't need plastic to grow things. It's just an aid. And I tried to explain that this garden evolved this way, and perhaps that person didn't watch my earlier videos to see the evolution of it. And of course, this whole area was just overrun. It was an allotment that had been left to go to weed for about 5 years, and nobody wanted to take it. And the only way I could consider taking it was to cover it. I dug it all and covered it like this, and that enables me to maintain it. It still requires quite a lot of hard work, but it does enable me to keep on top of it. And my sole purpose for doing this was because there was so much weed seed blowing into my plot that it was beginning to become quite an effort to keep the weeds at bay. There we go. That's what's behind it. It's not too bad to keep clean, so I'll carry on. There we are. A cursory eye across the plot this morning. It didn't look too bad, but that's a whole barrow load of weed and dead foliage, which grew from a covered plot. So it isn't the answer to everything for sure, but the plot looks a lot tidier now, and more importantly, it's not going to get too overgrown. It's just important to keep some sort of handle on it, and that way life's a lot easier. But I still missed some bits of grass. Right, well, that was quite a lot of effort, but on to the next. So things are okay on the squash and pumpkin bed. The biggest issue is the weather, and last night it was below 10 degrees, and to be honest with you, that's just not enough to get these squash and pumpkins going. There's a few flowers on bits and bobs, but that's mainly something that was started in the polytunnel and it's just sort of completing. You can tell by the general pale colour of all these plants that they're not really enjoying the weather, and we need a prolonged spell of warmth to really get them cracking on. And right now I'd say there is a risk that pumpkins and squash might be few and far between. We'll see how the rest of the summer goes. In the meantime, I've put these paths down not that long ago. I'm starting to see some early weed come up, and I just don't want a big job, so I'm just going to go over it and make sure that I pull out the start of what will become a problem. And I know one of my regular subscribers says I do get an awful lot of weeds compared to his garden. Well, I do, I think. This is pretty fertile land, and we of course get pestered by the good old mare's tail. And the other weed that's very prolific on here is rosebay willow herb, which seems to self-seed everywhere. So I don't know what yours is like. Tell me in the comments below whether you think your weeding is comparable to mine, or whether you've found a method to try and minimize the workload, because that would be really helpful. And as you know, I cover quite a lot of things with membrane, and I use quite a lot of mulch, and that does help. I had the great tip of putting my grass clippings on the raspberries. That's definitely working. But bindweed, mare's tail, rosebay willow herb, it's a regular. And there are a couple of plots on my allotment where people are just growing flowers and promoting wildlife, and I'm all for that. That does have an impact. We get quite a lot of forget-me-nots and various self-seeding plants, which to a gardener are very pretty, but they can become quite a long job. So I just try and keep on top of it. I don't really mind weeding, but it's a pressure when you've got other things to do. Right, I'm going to get on and get these paths as clear as I can. Shouldn't take me a moment. Well, it looks beautiful now. I've decided, whilst I was doing that weeding, I've decided on the title of my video this week, and it's going to be watch this before you start with an allotment or have an allotment, because, well, it's so easy to show you this. It looks wonderful, all those glorious onions growing in all their splendor, but the reality is I've been down on my knees. Look at those. And my back's a little bit achy, and it's been a pretty grubby job. But you've got to get some pleasure out of these things if you want an allotment. If you don't get pleasure out of growing, weeding, maintaining, and generally the fitness and exercise, is probably not for you, especially a plot that's a substantial size. One way, of course, of keeping weeds to a minimum and helping yourself in terms of height and getting down to the weeds level, then a raised bed is a real asset. And I find that if you've got a bed like this that you've put your own compost in, you still get weeds, without any shadow of a doubt, but it tends to be a little bit easier to keep on top of. And the weeds that I've got in here are fairly insignificant. They just need a little bit of a pull, and if I get really lazy, I can get down on my knees and they're almost at chest level, which is nice. And it takes only a few minutes to clear an area like this. And if you're new to allotments and you naturally want to grow loads and loads of plants, and it's exactly what I did when I started. After a couple of years, you begin to realize that planting with bigger spaces has got one or two key advantages. It does allow the plants to grow bigger, which I've talked about in my other videos, but also it's so much easier to weed. If these were all close together, there would be more shade, so more weed, and I would be pushing in and out of the plants, trying to see where the weed is. This way, it really is very simple. Right, I'm going to get on and finish this one. This type of open bed also gets just shed loads of weed where the sun gets to it, and also in the shade under the plants. But because it's my own compost and I use the no-dig method, weeding is not difficult. It's just part of the process. And you can see here that I can clear this area that was very densely populated with weeds in really no time at all. They just pull out. So you can help yourself by using a method that ends up with a fairly soft soil, and that enables you to weed quite quickly and efficiently. So there we are. That area is done in probably under a minute. Well, I certainly don't want to dishearten people, because growing in a garden or on an allotment is a fantastic thing to do. It provides us with vegetables and food all winter and most of the summer. and it's enjoyable and keeps me fit. So I haven't got any complaints. I just think you've got to be quite real about the effort that's required. And there's some real high spots. Let me show you some things that have really cheered me up this morning. Just look at these pears. Fantastic. They're really getting on now. And one or two have thinned out, although I've not noticed many on the bottom. But there's just so many. It's going to be an amazing season for pears, without any shadow of a doubt, as long as they stay on the tree. It's a bit windy this morning, but I think they'll be fine. And I've just got a few cherries on this cherry tree that I planted, well, probably 3 or 4 years ago. Do you know what? It doesn't matter that there's not many. It's just amazing that they've grown and they're starting to blush up. And who knows, I might even get to eat one of those. Fantastic. Apple tree, which I really hadn't counted on any fruit on it. It's got a wonderful clump of apples there and a few around here. I need to watch this because this dieback is not good news. It's still bendy, so it looks like it's just at the end. But I don't want any canker on my apples if I can possibly avoid it. Well, let's go and have a look what else we've got. Well, the polytunnel's not exempt from weeds. I gave that a bit of a weed last week. But we have got fruit coming out on every single tomato. And I spent, I don't know, 10 minutes this week just tying things up with some ties just to keep it under control, because the weight of things was starting to pull them down. And I've got tomatoes on my house, cherry tomato plants. That's fantastic to see as well. Look at those. It won't be long before I'm pulling nice sweet red tomatoes off those little plants. This one's enormous. This super sweet, and again I've been tying it back in to try and keep it an upright, decent looking plant that I can harvest from. And the Roma, actually the Roma, I don't think I've got any fruit on yet, but plenty of trusses and flowers. The carrots, now they need a weed. Look at all these stinging nettles coming up, but it takes seconds. There we go. That's the most of them up, and they're really growing well. Getting some height on the foliage now, and I managed to get my cucumbers to start going in an upward direction, so that's pretty pleasing. Note to self, must eat some salad. Plenty of lettuce supplies here. And this is the purple sprouting broccoli, which I sowed only the back end of last week, and it's shooting up, so won't be long before I'm putting those into small pots. And I've still got my parsnips to plant out. Just a few more days, I think. I want to get past this cooler weather, and they'll probably be the last thing that I put in the plot. Strawberry plants still need to move, and all this wood, which is the cancelled gooseberry cage, needs to find a home. And of course I need to carry on doing that path. But at the moment I'm showing you the good stuff. So let's go and have a look at my plums, if you'll excuse the expression. So I wanted to show you my climbing rose. I've got a lot of pruning back to do here. I understand that if you want to pick blackberries, you need to tie them in rather than prune them. So I might do a bit of that, but I've got a lot of stinging nettles in there. But this climbing rose, which I bought many years ago, and I thought would look nice in the hedge, is starting to do what I envisaged, which is wonderful to see. And this maple tree needs cutting back again, but it's a job I normally do at the beginning of the season. I did a little bit this year, but we've got lots of flowers coming through there from the rose, which is nice. And a bit of goose grass as well. So the plums, you can see the red currants really starting to colour up now. And we've just this week finishing the last pot of red currant jelly that Mrs. K made, and we'll soon be picking those to start the next year's red currant jelly. Wonderful. On the way to the plums, Mrs. K asked me to mention that she was a bit disappointed that the rhubarb wine had splattered all over the window. Note to self, move it away from the window when it's fermenting heavily. Oh well, we learn. Right, let's go and have a look at those plums. Ah, this tree is just laden with plums. It is fantastic. I can't wait for them to ripen. I just hope we get warm enough that they actually do. We'll see. Sprouts are doing well. Got to get canes in, but first I'm going to chop away all of that. It's a job for another day. I think actually I'm going to bring my hedge trimmer over and just slice it, because there's an awful lot of pruning to do there. Otherwise I'll probably just cover the sprouts with something light and then cut down onto it, and then I can move it all away quickly. Potatoes are just doing grand. This weather is fantastic for these potted potatoes because they stay so moist when we've got intermittent rain and cool weather. And of all the garlic that I've got, these are probably the best looking. And I noticed this morning there's one or two just starting to keel over, which is interesting. Be interesting to see whether in fact there's any white rot in here. I'm going to take this one out and see. Yep, I think there is white rot in my buckets. Now, you know, this isn't shop bought compost, this is my own compost, so I guess it's not completely unexpected, but it tells me that probably this week or the end of next week I need to start hooking that out and saving any that I can. Right. There's always so much to do, but if we can have some nice warm weather, that would be a treat. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you're thinking of having an allotment, I hope I've not put you off. I hope what I've done is just given you a reality check on the fact that it can be quite a lot of hard work. And if you enjoy hard work, it's fantastic. Good times.